6:04, and the public hearing is now officially open. Note that we will be recording this meeting, and if you haven't noticed, we did mute everyone just to cut down on the background noise, so you can turn your unmute button on when you're speaking. We'll give you some more directions on that a little bit later. This public hearing is for the renewal of the New Jersey Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, discharge to surface water, combined sewer overflow permits for North Bergen Municipal Utilities Authority, Woodcliff Sewage Treatment Plant, and the town of Guttenberg. We often use the acronym NJPDES in referring to the New Jersey Pollutant Discharge Elimination System program. My name is Susan Rosenwinkel. I am the hearing officer, and I am the Bureau Chief for the Bureau of Surface Water and Pretreatment Permitting within the Division of Water Quality at the Department of Environmental Protection, otherwise referred to as the Department or NJDEP. Jonathan Lekitron is the case manager for one of the permits, and he will be providing instructions on how to provide testimony today, while Joseph Manick will provide an overview of the subject permits. Also here today are many NJDEP staff that are part of the CSO program or part of other NJDEP programs. I will now be providing some general information about the public hearing process, which will take about 4 minutes. Marcelo Gracia will then present this same information in Spanish. We will then provide an overview of Microsoft Teams and a short summary of the permits in English, then in Spanish. This introductory information should take about 20 minutes in total. As established in the NJPDES regulations of the New Jersey Administrative Code at 7:14a, subchapter 15, this is a non-adversarial public hearing, which means that the department is here to listen and take testimony as part of our regulatory process. The purpose of this hearing is to provide the interested public, including the affected communities, with an opportunity to be heard on these proposed draft permit actions. The department will be accepting verbal and written statements today. Please note that both verbal and written statements have equal weight. So if somebody is not comfortable speaking and just has a written statement prepared, they can submit them electronically, where they will receive equal weight with verbal testimony. The email address for written comments is dwq_bswp@dep.nj.gov. We will now add that address to the chat. The purpose for this hearing is to receive your comments and concerns. The department will respond to all significant and relevant comments, both verbal and written, in a response to comments document, which will be issued as part of the final NJPDES permit decisions. The permittees and each person who has submitted comments will receive an electronic copy of the final decision document, provided you give us your email address. We will also provide a copy to anyone else who requests it, whether or not you submitted comments. Please be sure to leave your email address in the chat or send it to dwq_bswp@dep.nj.gov if you want to receive a copy. Please know that the public comment period will end at 11:59 p.m. on February 13th, 2023. If you would like to provide verbal comments today, please put your name, organization, and email address in the chat, and we will call your name when it is your turn. When I call you, please clearly state and spell your first and last name for the record. We have a court reporter assigned to transcribe the recorded testimony. If speakers are speaking on behalf of a particular organization, we ask that you identify that organization. We want to hear from everybody, and we want to give everybody here the opportunity to speak. In view of the time limitations, I am asking each speaker to limit their testimony to 5 minutes. Individual speakers may only testify once until we hear from every person who is here and wishes to give testimony. If time permits and there is an opportunity at the end of the hearing and a person wants to testify for a second time, we will do our best to accommodate you. We are asking that all speakers and members of the audience respect the right of each person here to be heard and refrain from any behavior that could interfere with the presentation of testimony. The hearing will end at the close of testimony or 8 p.m., whichever occurs first. The same information I just read will now be read in Spanish by one of our staff, Marcelo Gracia. After that, we will turn the discussion over to Jonathan Lekecharan, who will provide an overview of Microsoft Teams. After that, Joseph Manick will then give some factual information about the NJPDES permits. Joe is a section chief within the Bureau of Surface Water and Pretreatment Permitting. Okay, Marcelo.
Hola, abriré la audiencia en este momento. Deje que el registro muestre que la hora es 6:04 y la audiencia pública ya está oficialmente abierta. Tenga en cuenta que grabaremos esta junta. Esta audiencia se lleva a cabo por la renovación del permiso para descarga a aguas de superficie del desbordamiento de alcantarillado combinado de sistema de eliminación de descargas de contaminantes de Nueva Jersey. Para la Autoridad Municipal de Servicios Públicos de North Bergen, planta de tratamiento de aguas residuales de Woodcliff, la ciudad de Guttenberg. A menudo usamos el acrónimo NJPDES cuando nos referíamos al sistema de eliminación de descargas de contaminantes de Nueva Jersey. Mi nombre es Susan Rosenwinkel, soy la oficial de la audiencia pública y la directora de la Oficina de Permisos de Aguas de Superficie y para Tratamiento de la División de Calidad del Agua en el Departamento de Protección Ambiental, también denominado el Departamento o NJDEP. Jonathan Lekecharan es el administrador de casos para uno de los permisos y brindará instrucciones sobre cómo dar testimonio hoy, mientras que Joseph Manick presentará una descripción general de los permisos pertinentes. También hay aquí hoy muchos empleados de NJDEP que son parte del programa CSO o de otros programas en el NJDEP. Ahora brindaré información general sobre el proceso de la audiencia pública, lo que tomará unos 4 minutos. Luego, Marcelo Gracia presentará esta información en español. A continuación, proporcionaremos una descripción general de Microsoft Teams y un resumen breve de los dos permisos en inglés y luego en español. Esta información introductoria tomará unos 20 minutos en total. Como se establecen las regulaciones de NJPDES del Código Administrativo de Nueva Jersey 714A, subcapítulo 15, esta es una audiencia pública no contenciosa, la cual significa que el departamento está aquí para escuchar y tomar testimonio como parte de nuestro proceso regulatorio. El propósito de esta audiencia es brindar al público interesado, incluidas las comunidades afectadas, la oportunidad de ser escuchados con respecto a estas actividades de los borradores del permiso propuestos. El departamento aceptará declaraciones verbales y por escrito el día de hoy. Tengan en cuenta que las declaraciones por escrito y las verbales tendrán la misma importancia. Así que, si alguien no se siente cómodo de hablar y solamente tiene una declaración por escrito preparada, puede enviarla de forma electrónica y se le dará la misma importancia que a un testimonio verbal. El correo electrónico para enviar comentarios por escrito es dwq-bswp@dep.nj.gov. Ahora añadiremos ese correo al chat. El propósito de esta audiencia es recibir sus comentarios y preocupaciones. El departamento responderá a todos los comentarios significativos y pertinentes, tanto verbales como por escrito, en un documento de respuestas a comentarios que se publicará como parte de las decisiones finales o de los permisos de NJPDES. Los permisionarios y todas las personas que hayan presentado comentarios recibirán una copia electrónica del documento con la determinación final, siempre que nos haya indicado su correo electrónico. También entregaremos copias a quienes las soliciten, aunque no hayan enviado comentarios. Asegúrese de dejar su correo electrónico en el chat o de enviarlo a dwq-bswp@dep.nj.gov si quiere recibir una copia. Tenga en cuenta que el periodo para enviar comentarios públicos terminará el 13 de febrero de 2023 a las 8:59 de la noche. Si desean presentar comentarios públicos de manera verbal hoy, escriban su nombre, organización y correo electrónico en el chat y los llamaremos por su nombre cuando sea su turno. Cuando los llame, digan y deletreen su nombre y apellido con claridad para el registro. Tenemos un taquígrafo judicial asignado para transcribir el testimonio grabado. Si alguien hablará en representación de una organización, le pedimos que identifiquen la organización. Queremos escuchar a todos y darles la oportunidad de hablar aquí. Debido a tiempo limitado, les pido que su testimonio no exceda los 5 minutos. Cada uno solamente podrá hablar una vez hasta que escuchemos a todas las personas que están aquí y desean dar testimonio. En caso de que el tiempo lo permita y sea posible hacerlo al final de la audiencia, si una persona desea declarar por segunda vez, haremos todo lo posible para permitírselo. Pedimos que todos los que hablen y los miembros de la audiencia respeten el derecho de cada persona a presentar y ser escuchado, y que eviten las conductas que pudieran interferir con la presentación del testimonio. Esta audiencia terminará cuando concluyen los testimonios o a las 8 p.m., lo que ocurre primero. Esta misma información que acabo de leer ahora será leído en español por uno de nuestros empleados, Marcelo Gracia. Después le daremos la palabra a Jonathan Lakecharán, que presentará una descripción general de Microsoft Teams. A continuación, Joe Manning dará información factual sobre los permisos del NJPDES. Joe es el jefe de sección de la Oficina de Permisos de Aguas de Superficie y Pretratamiento.
Okay, great. Thank you, Marcelo. John?
Hi, my name is Jonathan Laketron, and I am an environmental engineer within the NJPDES program. In order to inform the NJDEP hearing officer of your interest in submitting verbal testimony, move your cursor around to open the Teams meeting toolbar, which will appear toward the bottom of your screen. Click the chat icon to open the meeting chat box on the side of the screen. Type your full name and the name of the organization that you represent and your email address in the Type New Message field at the bottom of the meeting chat box. When entering this information, use the following format: first name, last name, organization, and email address. See below for an example. Click the send icon or to press enter on your keyboard to submit your message and notify the NJDEP hearing officer of your interest in submitting verbal testimony. To unmute your microphones to submit verbal testimony, move your cursor around to open the Teams meeting toolbar. If you're muted, the mute icon appears in the toolbar. Click on the mute icon to unmute your microphone. The mute icon will change to a microphone. Begin your verbal testimony. To mute your microphone after submitting verbal testimony, move your cursor around to open the Teams meeting toolbar and click the microphone icon to mute your microphone. The microphone icon will change to a mute icon. How to turn on your video feed during the public hearing. Move your cursor around to open the Teams meeting toolbar. If your video is off, the video off icon appears in the toolbar. Click on the video off icon to turn your video feed on. The video off icon will change to the video on, and to turn off the video, click the video on icon to turn the video feed off. The video icon will then change to video off. The same information I read will now be read in Spanish by Marcelo Gracia. Then Joe Manick will provide an overview of the permits that were issued.
Hola, mi nombre es Jonathan Lakecharán y soy ingeniero ambiental en el programa NJPDES. Para informar al oficial de la audiencia pública de NJDP sobre su interés en dar testimonio verbal, mueva su cursor para que aparezca la barra de herramientas de reuniones de Teams en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Haga clic en el icono de diálogo para abrir el chat de la reunión a un lado de su pantalla. Escriba su nombre completo y el nombre de la organización que represente y su correo electrónico en el campo que dice Type a New Message. Escriba un mensaje nuevo en la parte inferior del chat de la reunión. Cuando escriba esta información, use el formato nombre más apellido más organización más correo electrónico. Vea el ejemplo de abajo. Haga clic en el icono de enviar o presione la tecla Enter en su teclado para enviar su mensaje y notificar al oficial de audiencia pública sobre su interés en dar testimonio verbal. Para activar su micrófono, para presentar su testimonio verbal, mueva su cursor para abrir la barra de herramientas de reuniones de Teams. Si su micrófono está silenciado, se ve el icono de micrófono con una barra a través. Haga clic en ese icono para activar su micrófono. El icono de micrófono cambiará a un micrófono sin la barra a través. Empiece a dar su testimonio verbal. Para silenciar su micrófono después de presentar su testimonio verbal, mueva su cursor para que aparezca la barra de herramientas de reuniones de Teams y haga clic en el icono de micrófono para silenciarlo. El icono cambiará a un icono con una barra a través. ¿Cómo activar su cámara durante la audiencia pública? Mueva su cursor para abrir la barra de herramientas de reuniones de Teams. Si su video está apagado, aparece el icono de cámara con una barra a través. Haga clic en el icono para activar su video. El icono de la cámara cambiará a una cámara sin la línea. Para apagar su cámara, haga clic en el icono de cámara. El icono de cámara cambiará a un icono con una línea a través. Si se ha conectado por teléfono y desea hablar hoy, intente avisarnos entre los testimonios de los presentadores. Si usted está usando el teléfono, puede presionar estrellas 6 para silenciarse su micrófono y activar el micrófono. Esta misma información que acabo de leer será leída ahora en español por Marcelo Gracia. Después, Joe Manick presentará un resumen de los permisos que se han otorgado.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Manick, and I am Section Chief in the Bureau of Surface Water and Pretreatment Permitting. I'd like to give you some background on the subject of today's hearing, the renewal NJPDES permits for North Bergen Municipal Utilities Authority Woodcliff Sewage Treatment Plant, or Woodcliff STP, permit number NJ00290084, and the Town of Guttenberg permit number NJ0108715. These permits were issued on December 9th, 2022, and are posted on the NJDEP's Division of Water Quality website. As stated in the draft permits, the comment period will end at 11:59 p.m. on February 13th, 2023, in accordance with NJAC 7:14A-1510 and 1514. The permits issued are individual NJPDES surface water permits for a combined sewer system and its receiving sewage treatment plant, the Woodcliff STP. Combined sewer overflows, or CSOs, are discharges from combined sewer systems. Combined sewer systems are sewers that were designed many decades ago to collect rainwater and snow melt runoff, domestic sewage, and industrial wastewater in the same pipe. Combined sewer systems are still present in certain older cities in the state. North Bergen MUA and the Town of Guttenberg own separate portions of one hydraulically connected combined sewer system. These collection systems flow to the Woodcliff STP, which is owned by the North Bergen MUA. When the conveyance capacity of the collection system and/or the Woodcliff STP is exceeded, excess combined sewage flows pass through combined sewer overflow outfalls. The two combined sewer outfalls and the sewage treatment plant discharge to the Hudson River, classified as saline estuary 2, category 2 waters per the NJDEP's surface water quality standards. To comply with federal and state CSO regulations, the permittees have committed to meet the requirements of the presumptive approach, which requires elimination or capture of a minimum of 85% of the annual average combined sewage collected in the system during wet weather. Presently, the permittees are at 89% capture. The projects proposed in this permit are projected to further exceed the minimum 85% capture. These projects, which include both gray and green infrastructure, are projected to achieve 92% capture, which exceeds the 85% minimum. The primary element of the already submitted long-term control plan for both permittees is the upgrade of the Woodcliff STP to increase the facility's wet weather capacity as well as the average monthly capacity. In addition to the STP expansion, the permittees will be incorporating green infrastructure projects, inflow and infiltration reduction projects, storm and sanitary sewer separation, and netting chamber improvements. Some of these projects will also help address localized flooding. As per the long-term control plan and proposed NJPDES permit requirements, these projects are projected to be completed within the next 5 years. The same information I just read will now be read in Spanish by Marcelo. After that, we will return to Sue to begin taking testimony.
Hola, mi nombre es John Manick y soy el jefe de sección en la Oficina de Permisos de Aguas de Superficie y Pretratamiento. Les quiero compartir algo de información de fondo sobre el tema de la audiencia de hoy. La renovación de los permisos de NJPDES para la Autoridad Municipal de Servicios Públicos de North Bergen, planta de tratamiento de aguas residuales, de Woodcliff o Woodcliff STP. Número de permiso NJ0029084 y la ciudad de Guttenberg. Número de permiso NJ0108715. Estos permisos se otorgaron el 9 de diciembre de 2022 y están publicados en el sitio web de la División de Calidad de Agua del NJDEP. Como se indica en los borradores de los permisos, el periodo de comentarios terminará el 13 de febrero de 2023 a las 11:59 de la noche, de acuerdo con los artículos 7.14a a 15.10 y 15.14 del Código Administrativo de Nueva Jersey. Los permisos otorgados son permisos individuales de superficie del NJPDES para un sistema de alcantarillado combinado y la planta receptora de tratamiento de aguas residuales, Woodcliff STP. Los desbordamientos de alcantarillado combinado, o CSO, son descargas de sistemas de alcantarillado combinado. Los sistemas de alcantarillado combinado son alcantarillas que se diseñaron hace décadas para recolectar el agua de lluvia y deshielo, aguas residuales domésticas y aguas residuales industriales en la misma tubería. Los sistemas de alcantarillado combinado todavía están presentes en algunas ciudades más antiguas del estado. North Bergen, MUA y la ciudad de Guttenberg son propietarios de porciones separadas de un sistema de alcantarillado combinado conectado de manera hidráulica. Estos sistemas de recolección fluyen hacia Woodcliff STP, que pertenece a North Bergen MUA. Cuando se excede la capacidad de transporte del sistema de recolección y o la Woodcliff STP, el exceso de aguas residuales combinadas pasa por los desagües de desbordamiento de alcantarillado combinado. Los dos desagües de aguas residuales combinadas y la planta de tratamiento de aguas residuales vierten en el río Hudson, cuyas aguas se clasifican en la categoría de estuario salino 2, categoría 2, según los estándares de la calidad de agua de superficie del NJPDES. Para cumplir con las regulaciones estatales y federales de SCO, los permisionarios se han comprometido a cumplir con los requisitos del enfoque de presunción que exige la eliminación o la capción de un mínimo de 85% de promedio anual de aguas residuales combinadas recolectadas por el sistema durante tiempo lluvioso. En la actualidad, el nivel de capción de los permisarios es el 89%. Se prevé que los proyectos propuestos en este permiso superen la capción mínima del 85%. Con estos proyectos, que incluyen infraestructura gris y verde, se prevé captar el 92%, lo que excede el 85%. El componente principal del plan de control a largo plazo, que ya se presentó para los dos permisionarios, es la mejora de Woodcliff STP para aumentar la capacidad en tiempo lluvioso de la instalación y la capacidad mensual promedio. Además de la expansión de la STP, los permisionarios incorporarán proyectos de infraestructura verde, proyectos para reducir la afluencia y infiltración, la separación del drenaje sanitario y el drenaje pluvial y mejoras en las cámaras de redes de alcantarillado. Algunos de estos proyectos también ayudarán con las inundaciones locales. Según el plan de control a largo plazo y los requisitos propuestos de los permisos de NJPDES, se prevé finalizar estos proyectos en los próximos 5 años. Esta misma información que acabo de leer ahora será leído en español por Marcelo Gracia. Después volveremos con Sue Rosenwinkel y empezaremos a tomar testimonios.
Okay, great. Thank you, Marcelo. Okay, so it looks like our first person to give testimony is Shamir Patel. You would like to unmute yourself and go ahead?
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Shamir. I'm a resident of North Bergen. I've been a lifelong resident of North Bergen, but I bought this home in September of 2019. In the summer of September 2020, I began to accumulate water in my basement. We did not know, initially we thought it was an issue with the home. Some pumps installed, check valves, etc. After that, in summer 2021, I had water again in the basement, accumulating between 2 to 6 inches at its worst, 4 feet on 4 different occasions. I have the dates and the amount of rainfall each day. At this point, I began to understand that this isn't a problem local to my home. So I made some outreaches on some community forums and began to get feedback from my neighbors. Along with that, we began to knock on doors and accumulated 30 some odd addresses of homes that were impacted by similar issues in the area. Some of the outreach led to my neighbors crying, right? This has been a problem for decades, nothing gets done about it. We met, I was able to get some positive correspondence from the town, but my issue is that I don't understand, or I'm not getting the feedback that expresses if this is an issue within the remit of the North Bergen, local government to resolve, or is this, a strategic issue that they're not going to fix? And it's not due to a lack of transparency, but if they're not able to give me that answer, I wonder if they know what the root cause of this problem is. So this is, some of the things which have been going around here, at least in the 70s in North Bergen, is I have maybe 3 or 4 neighbors that have put hundreds of thousands of dollars into the house. Some could afford it, and after a year and a half, leave. There was another neighbor who just moved in, and after a year, he left. So people are leaving. 2022 wasn't so bad, but it was an anomalous year because of the lack of rainfall, or relatively speaking. The other issue is the inability for us to have coverage. So flood insurance, depending on your insurer, is difficult to get for this area, right? I was the only one in the area that was insured, at least from who I spoke to, because I had some random, thing that I signed up for that covered my cost, and none of my neighbors had it. I've had neighbors such as Gabby, who could not join today, that had to take out a $100,000 loan. A couple of the unanswered questions here is this water contaminated, right? The water we're getting in our homes, we don't know what it is, right? At least in my home, there's no stench. I have 3 children. I have to pay for a cleaning company to come to wipe the place down with chemicals that I don't know if they're any better, right? Where do I learn about what's in this water? What do I do if I get 6 inches of water? Do I need to disinfect the whole place? Not just me, but for the community. I know of a home where they've become so accustomed to the water, they live in it, right? So once again, any sort of information about a long-term fix for this problem to alleviate some of us that intend to be in the area for a while would be great. But secondly, how do we address our homes when the issue does happen? How do we, decontaminate? What steps should we take? And lastly, on 78th Street, a life will be lost when this happens. The one thing I want to mention that's very specific is that these homes only get flooded when the catch basins overflow. We don't watch our basements. We stand in the corner and we wait for the catch basins to become incapacitated. And once that happens, we run to our basements and we see water coming. And I have not been able to get an answer on why, when the catch basins, why do they overflow after about 1 inch of rain? I have some metrics. And secondly, what is happening that causes then the water to seep in from the cracks in the ground? So if we can have answers to those questions, even if there's not a fix, that'll be around the corner. It could help us deal with the situation moving forward. One bad rainfall, I had to rescue a gentleman stuck in his car. It was that bad. This corner gets flooded very bad, right? And it's not, hurricane-like rain that causes it to flood. And I also had a neighbor across the street, a very elderly lady that was stuck in her basement. That was the night of the hurricane. So some of the feedback in September of 2021. So the feedback we received was, yes, it was once in a 100-year storm, but it's not. It's going to happen again, right? That wasn't a category 3 or 4. It was a category 1. And you had car stuck and an elderly lady in her basement that couldn't get a fire department to come get her out, right? So yeah, I've asked a few questions. I know it's recorded. Any way we can get some information, some help, some transparency would go a long way. I have lists of addresses. I have metrics in terms of rainfall. We're desperate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Okay. Next up is Elena Little, and if you could just spell your name and any organization that you represent.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. My name is Elena Little. I'm a resident of Jersey City, and I'm also currently a candidate for Hudson County Executive. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on these draft CSO permits. Of course, combined sewer overflows affect many communities throughout Hudson County. Even though I don't personally have firsthand experience with the flooding in North Bergen or Guttenberg, I most certainly have experienced flooding in Jersey City. So I'm encouraged to see sewer separation at the Galaxy Towers and that some partial separation has already been completed. I'm wondering whether there are additional parts of the combined sewer system that beyond what is covered in this permit that are not planned to be separated, or if there is a complete separation planned in a future iteration of this permit, or basically the extent of sewer separation that will be planned. My second question is, after separation, whether there is a plan for treatment of the storm sewer flow. So, of course, in an urban area like this, there's going to be lots of runoff and contamination from the roadways and things like that. And also wondering whether the most impactful projects in this sort of 5-year schedule, the most impactful projects with the greatest potential for flood reduction, are they being prioritized at the top, regardless of whether they're green or gray infrastructure? Or is there some other method for prioritizing over this 5-year schedule? Finally, I was really glad to see that this meeting was bilingual, included real-time Spanish language interpretation. And I hope in the permit, this could be a requirement for future meetings that take place under the public engagement requirements of the permit. So both accessibility, which I think now just needs to be considered, but if accessibility could be required, as well as language accessibility could be required. So to summarize my 4 questions, which I would love to have answered if there's time, are first, the extent of the sewer separation that's planned, and whether there are portions of the system that will be remaining combined. Second is what sort of treatment is planned to remove the total suspended solids in the storm water. And third is, how are the projects being prioritized in the schedule? And fourth is whether accessibility and real-time language resources could be required for future public meetings under the permit, because I did notice that materials were required to be in multiple languages, but I wasn't sure about the real-time meetings such as this one. So thank you.
Thank you, Elena. Just want to make sure everybody understands that this is more of a hearing that's to take testimony. We don't get into too much of a back and forth, but I am just going to mention one thing for you. The question about the schedule that is in the permit that's posted online. I think it's on page 27. So you might be able to get some more information about that. Okay. We have, I guess, Reverend Steve Germoso. I guess he just wants some information. Suzanne, looks like you're up next.
Hi there, thank you very much. And thank you again, as I shared this morning, to the DP and all the hard work it took to get to this point. It took a lot of coordination and thought and navigation, all that, and expertise, so thank you. And again, it's great that this is being implemented in 5 years, which is 5 years shorter than the 10 years that was stated in the long-term control plan, and that the wet weather capture percentage exceeds the minimum, as you shared. And so, we urge you to keep this shorter timeline and standard around increased capture as you release new permits in the future. I also, just based on what Shamir mentioned, I want to ask the DP, is the DP sure that the STP and the Galaxy Towers are really the only issues that need to be addressed? I have also heard from other community members that in that area, there is flooding in streets and basements. And so just want to make sure that the DP is aware of that and has been able to analyze that. And just to further that point, is there going to be, can there be an alert notification so that residents like Shamir and others know when there's potentially going to be flooding in their basements, using some predictive modeling, looking at the weather, rainfall, that the municipality can ensure that people are alerted, because often this water is contaminated, which causes much more distress, right, for residents. And so, and in these older communities, there tends to be, more renters or more transient residents who might not even be aware that they live in a combined sewer overflow neighborhood. Many people don't know that. So they might not even be aware Shamir is, but other people might not be aware of that. So being able to educate and notify people ahead of time so they can learn about the issue and prepare for decontamination. In Patterson, as you all know, there's certain areas that were not included in the LTCP, like the 19th Avenue area that Martha lives in. And so we want to make sure that, all projects, all areas that are impacted are covered. And I know that I just want to focus a little bit on public engagement, because that was a big piece of what the public is keen to enforce. And there's quite a few positive findings or positive aspects of the permit as it relates to that. The fact that you're shifting the focus from public participation to public engagement is wonderful. Also, as was mentioned earlier, ensure that these hearings also take that into account. I think several residents requested this morning that you post the registration to these hearings at least 48 hours in advance, as is the case with many public hearings, and have a more prominent visible spot on the website so we can find it. It's positive that you have an LTCP coordinator, that they're going to be required to be hired, and a supplemental team, and efforts to recruit members of the team are required to be documented, right, and shared publicly. That there's team meetings and project-based meetings are required, that the Department of Environmental Justice shall be given 30 days notice of meeting schedules. Can you require within the permit, ideally, or create specific prescriptive guidance document where that is not possible, but specifically around the following things? The criteria for the coordinator is not defined in the permits. So could NJDP draft a baseline requirement for what this coordinator's role is and their responsibilities, including minimum requirements for communication, outreach to the community, and a training manual? It's also vague in the permit as to ensuring that members of the community, and again, especially those from overburdened communities, are included in public engagement. The permit uses the phrase "with a goal of including members of the following groups at a minimum where possible." And so, we believe there should be minimum requirements, specific language on methods that should be used to recruit members of overburdened communities to ensure their representation and engagement, right? For example, obtaining input from 3 relevant community-based organizations, getting input from the DP's Environmental Justice Department to make those connections, et cetera, et cetera. That kind of guidance is critical. Can the DP develop minimum requirements around the number of supplemental team meetings to be held annually, so that the meetings are not only held when a project is occurring, but with a frequency that will keep the public informed, right? So for example, requiring a minimum of 2 meetings annually outside of any project-specific meeting. Those kinds of specifics will help ensure that the permit holder is doing their best. Can you also clarify minimum outreach requirements to ensure that overburdened communities are aware of the team meetings? And that could be social media, traditional print, perhaps, that's frequently viewed by those communities. So really, digging down into the details around that. Understandably, or I shouldn't say understand, but meeting accessibility, as someone just mentioned, in the permit, it's described as to be kept in mind, in quotes, with a few suggestions. And so kept in mind, we think there could be some more rigor around that. So instead, meeting accessibility should be a requirement with specific and prescriptive guidance on what that should look like. Right now, the permit says permittees are required to hold public meetings. Again, from accessibility standpoint, there might be members of the community without computers or members who can't get to in-person meetings due to physical limitations. So how can you require cross-section of sector of meetings, or that language translation is part of every meeting, or sign language interpretation? Can you require that in-person meetings, for example, are located within 5 minutes from public transportation for walking or other ways of getting there, and don't require stairs for climbing? Those kinds of things are critical. Understandably, not every long-term control plan project will trigger legal review under the New Jersey's environmental justice law. That said, the principles of serving environmental justice communities that are outlined in your Furthering the Promise guidance document should be considered before implementing projects in overburdened communities. So I think those are the key elements of public participation, environmental justice, and accessibility that we recommend become requirements or specific guidance for permit holders, so everyone is feeling that they are participating, that they're heard, there's a feedback loop, and that there's accountability. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Next up, we have Rachel Dawn Davis. You ready, Rachel?
I'd actually like to, if it's possible, let Vivian and Haley go before me and let them do that. That's okay?
Sure. Okay, Vivian, are you ready?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, good afternoon. So my name is Vivian Amjade. I'm a Hudson County resident and also representing Union City Community Gardens. I'd like to reiterate something that was mentioned about developing a minimum requirement around the number of supplemental meetings held annually for the purpose of having more public informs occur, require a minimum of 2 meetings annual outside of any project-specific meetings. That could also offer more opportunity to share funding, jobs, and training opportunities. I would also like to speak on to require a mechanism for assurance that gray infrastructure will not negatively accumulate impacts on overburdened communities. And that so that the principles of ED communities as outlined from the Promise guidance document must be considered before implementing these projects in overburdened communities, especially. And the last suggestion for control measures with green versus gray infrastructure, to prioritize controls and projects based on the impact of combined sewage overflow volume reduction and water quality improvements, including well-designed green infrastructure. Thank you for hearing.
Okay, great. Thank you, Vivian. Okay, Haley?
Hi, hello, can you guys hear me?
We can, thank you.
Great. Thank you guys so much for allowing us to speak further on this topic. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to speak again. And I'm very appreciative that we have been selected as one of the first of the 7 regional permits. I've lived in North Bergen all my life, and as you know, it's flooded many, many, many times, and I'm looking forward to helping the NJDEP develop a plan that sets a guideline for the future of the other regional plans. I wanted to mention a couple things that I wasn't able to bring up during the last portion or the first meeting. So, you know, it's a very positive aspect that the wastewater facility floodproofing plan is based on current sea level rise and intended to protect the plant into the future, which is really great. But I wanted to ask, because the permittee is required to track changes in precipitation and address them, but it's not clear how or if the plans will be subject to the new NJ Pact rules. So how will the DEP incorporate NJ-PACT rules into this permit and future permits? And of course, upon the completion of the end of the effective NJDEP permit, will the DEP require permittees to recalibrate the H&H model with the updated water quality data, precipitation rates, and other climate-related data? Continuing on talking about water quality, I think it's really important that we have the water quality monitoring nearby combined sewage overflow outfalls, as well as grabbing sampling during implementation, particularly during wet weather events. It would really provide beneficial protection to the public. Will the permittee be required to conduct water quality sampling near combined sewage overflow outfalls during the implementation of LTCP projects and during wet weather events that generate overflows? And how will the DEP utilize information from these permits, including water quality and precipitation data, to look at opportunities to improve protections on the water bodies, such as use attainability analysis? We're really hopeful that the permittee should include in the operations and maintenance programming and corresponding manual a system cleaning program. Will the DEP do, what will the DEP do if the permittee does not comply annually with the systems cleaning program, and if they do not meet the 100% inspection and cleaning of the system at the end of the respective permit, 5 years? Will performance factors and deficiencies be communicated to the public, and if so, how? Right now, it's unclear if the role of the NJDEP staff will play in it's unclear of the role that the NJDEP staff will play in inspecting and enforcing all projects, including gray and green infrastructure projects. So how will the DEP inspect and enforce all projects? And how are they going to ensure the permittee is complying with their maintenance plan for all projects? And finally, I wanted to speak briefly on the financing and affordability. This permit currently does not mention the distribution of costs between the municipal and utility permit holders. Is there a consideration of the fair distribution of costs between municipal and utility holders applied across all permittees? We feel general permit conditions should be referenced whether they're applicable or not, and then note that the condition is not applicable in a particular instance. We appreciate that the affordability will be incorporated into the asset management plan, the AMP, life cycle costing and long-term funding strategy of the treatment of water work facilities. So thank you guys so much for that. But how will the DEP ensure that the CSO supplemental team can provide input on the AMP and how it is establishing rates? How will the permittee demonstrate a commitment to affordability? This is obviously a very important issue that has been mentioned a couple times tonight. And can the DEP be more specific in its guidance to permit holders around other cost-effective, innovative financing opportunities to help finance this work equitably, such as stormwater utilities, iBank low-interest loan programs, utilizing more green infrastructure grants, and more? Thank you guys so much for allowing me to speak again tonight, and I finished my statement.
Thank you, Haley. Okay, Rachel, are you ready now?
Yes, sure. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So Rachel Davis, RACHEL DAVIS. I'm the Public Policy and Justice Organizer for Water Spirit. Water Spirit, again, is a 25-year-old nonprofit ministry of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Peace. Thank you to NJDEP for this starting point and focusing on immediate planning, 5 years, as it is the most critical 5 years ever for humanity. Thank you to the residents who spoke tonight and those that will submit comments going forward. We worked to honor the lives lost due to storms past and those to come that will come, as was echoed by commenters earlier tonight, by speaking about practical action. So the attendance this morning was very low. The attendance tonight is even lower. NJDEP and the permit holders should ensure robust language and accessibility inclusion, driving the public engagement effort that's included. Stairs for some may feel like the last frontier, and there should be a goal of majority turnout. So it's not clear that that is the goal, given the opportunity for expanding upon this outreach effort. I echo Haley's question about water quality measurements, and I just hearing Shamir Patel speaking about we're desperate. We at Water Spirit felt this desperation back in 2021. This water contamination is so hazardous, and it's not something that will ever go away until it's handled, and it's traumatic on so many layers and so many levels. We helped with Sewer-Free Streets and Rivers, capturing stormwater stories across generations, actually in front of the Patterson Falls a couple falls ago. I spoke to that desperation earlier today when I mentioned this morning the USA Today article featuring Martha Arancibia, who was spoken of earlier, who is a multiple flood victim and former Green Team leader. And she's led, excuse me, a successful catch basin maintenance effort. And as mentioned, it's imperative Patterson is wholly included in the long-term control plan. It's home to 50 schools. And again, I thought that this coverage would have helped spur even faster and more timely policy reform and investments in green infrastructure throughout the whole state. And I'm glad to see this effort. I'm also very much sharing the urgency with which we have to gather all of our hands on deck, as I said earlier this morning, and roll up our sleeves and get to work. Water Spirit has worked with and learned of residents who, like Martha, are taking catch basin cleaning into their own hands. So this is a huge opportunity. They are receiving funding for kits and compensation for educational time spent out in the community, specifically in various languages. We helped apply for grant funding for green infrastructure assistance, specifically for Patterson, in conjunction with several other organizations as part of the 319H grant. We're glad to help more. Trust must be established for the funding to be directly applied to the affected areas and most affected residents. So, question, what does enforcement look like for failed maintenance and inspection standardization for green infrastructure? Maintenance is key with respect to green infrastructure, and we'll again share the link to the webinar series that we helped co-host featuring the iBank and experts in and around the state on stormwater management, stormwater utility exploration, and green infrastructure analyses, which again, we have 300 green infrastructure champions throughout the state, including this area. And we are all, I think, capable of coming together on these wonderful, technological tools that the few of us here have been able to access tonight to expand upon our outreach and really get everybody engaged. So I have a question about, again, accessibility. What are plans for future accessibility and language accessibility for meetings going forward? I'm suggesting perhaps also on the website, perhaps you could have a brighter color font introducing the meeting announcements and links, maybe like an orange, including the phone call information. And again, we'll share comments in writing going forward, but I just wanted to echo that the more we realize the interconnectedness of water and plan watershed by watershed and understand, again, the resources we have at our fingertips to help fast track a lot of this great potential, not catch-all solutions, pun intended, I guess, but they are potential preventative measures that we can employ right now. And this is about lives, this is about health, and about, taking care of everybody. It's frankly, I've said this before, it's a tremendous embarrassment that this is still an issue. And I hope and look forward to working on all of this with you. And again, we'll share resources in the chat. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And just so everybody is aware, the email address for submitting comments is on the screen. If you prepared a written statement tonight, you'd like to send that to us, please know you can always supplement it after. It is helpful for us to have those comments in writing. Do we have anyone else that wishes to testify tonight? Anyone? Anybody that wants to testify again that we already went through a first time? Oh, we have Lou. Lou, you wish to testify?
Yes, hi. First of all, I wanted to say thank you for having this hearing, and just wanted to echo a bunch of points that a lot of others have already mentioned. I think it's great that there is a requirement for a public engagement process, but also agree that the information for it was really unclear, and I would love to see especially print materials sent out in advance to the community, because a lot of people that I know that experience a lot of this flooding, homeowners, they frequently pay the most attention to those flyers and things sent out directly in mailboxes. So I think that would be really useful. And yeah, I'll be sending a written statement as well, but just wanted to put in my 2 cents for the record, I guess. And thank you again for having this meeting.
Thank you, Lou. Can I just trouble you to spell your name just for the record, since we don't have it in
Sure.
the chat?
Yes, it's L-U, and my last name is Chavez, C-H-A-V-E-Z.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify? We got a whole hour. No? Okay, so let the record show it's 7 o'clock. And I think I'm, oh, wait, we have a new message. Let's see. Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Appreciate that. And I guess we'll call the hearing to a close. Really would like to thank you all for your time, for giving us your thoughts on this very important issue. And we'll be talking to you soon. Thank you.